Welcome to Yates Makes. So I'm back with the second video in a series on stenciling. In this video we're going to be dealing with multi-layered spray can stencils, preparing those stencils for cutting, preparing backgrounds and spraying it all up onto your background. Check out, I'll link up here somewhere, check out the first video on how I use Procreate and Photoshop to prepare either photographic or drawn images for multi-layered stencils. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so once you have finished editing, print out. Here I've printed out onto like 140, 160 GSM smooth card, ready to do your cuts. Okay, ready to cut. So obviously the first one is quite easy. It's going to be a silhouette of the whole outline, so we can just mark that silhouette. I've worked out that my silhouette I'm going to spray black. Now that is because I've got more islands, you know, as I mentioned previously when editing this, more islands of white and grey than I have of black, and I can quite easily lose some of these black shapes or connect them up. So if we now have to look at which is grey or white, and there's more white islands on grey than there is grey islands on white, and you know, this grey shape is quite interconnected. I can connect it to the edges as well to add a bit more structure. These I can connect up. So the next stage would be to cut the grey, and the white can come out with the grey. So that's going to be my mids. First layer and final layer, second layer, is going to be my white, and that I'm just going to cut and maybe do a few modifications on the way that you'll see as I film it. Simple, sort of. So cutting, nice sharp blade, new blade if you've got one. You know, if you've never done this before, always trying to cut in the same direction, rotate your paper, not your arm, you know, make your life easy. So that's my silhouette cut out. That one was really simple. So now I'm moving on to cut my grey layer out, and just so I don't lose any of my black parts, you'll see there the comparison. I'm just doing one last double check, and with a pen, penning in, joining up some of those black small details to make sure I don't lose any. Okay, the one kind of anomaly, or kind of, I don't know, little island that I'm going to have to think around is the pupil. So at the moment, I'm still cutting the grey layer. Of course, as I said already, the white can come out with the grey, but because I kept my main part of the head and shoulders when I cut my silhouette out, I'm going to use that to stencil the eye back in right at the end. Wow, this is fiddly. You've got to really like stenciling to sort of put yourself through this, but you know, like a lot of people who enjoy stenciling, it's quite meditative, you know. And the kind of reward, well, you know what's coming as well, the fun at the end. And the fact you can reuse these so many times, getting there. And I just love using this scalpel. My word, this is old. Look, it's so old, from where my dad before me used it. The Swan Morton logo is just worn away. Seen some action, that. Little tip, if you've got like an angle poise, here's mine, it's just off camera, I've got it set really low to help me see where I'm cutting. And obviously my cutting mat is quite dark, a bit of a mess, it's got all sorts of you know, scum all over it from the years it's been used. But, you know, have a bit of white paper just to lay underneath, and you can really see the shapes you're cutting, just to check where you want to refine things. Anyway, a couple of tips. Save your eyes. Have a light really close to hand. Okay, on the home straight now. This bit is a nightmare. Oh my god, what was I thinking? I should know better, but you know, the texture, I guess, is this sort of like looser, fluffier feathers on up on its haunches and top of the wings, and it's really, you know, you need to imply a different texture, I guess. I'm gonna have to simplify it a bit though, because all these tricky little curves, and we'll get there. Home straight. Okay, I give up. You win, Mr. Jackdaw. That's about all my finger is going to take. I'm just starting to get a bit of a blister there, so yeah, quite a lot of cutting this afternoon. I always get this question when I do masking tape, collograph videos. How long did it take to prepare that plate? Well, I've lost track, but I'll tell you this. Whilst cutting, with a brief pause to cook dinner, I've listened to Cat Power's new record, back to front. That's probably 45 minutes. Avalanches, that's a double album, so that's another hour, I would have thought. Robert Johnson, probably about 35-40 minutes. Another double album, that's Big Thief's new album, which is good. So what's that? Probably 2.5 hours worth of cutting, I would have thought. And I still actually haven't finished the pier. You know, I'm nearly there with that. Just a few bits. But I'm going to give my finger a break for the rest of the day. Anyway, this is all ready to go. Apart from, I'm going to have to find the head that I cut out of the whole silhouette piece just to do that pupil. Alright, cool. Progress. I absolutely love spray painting, so it's well worth a blister. Okay, a quick note on preparation of background surfaces. Of course, you're going to be using spray cans, which are more than likely going to be oil based, and they're going to go on pretty much any surface. I like to work on either wood or a canvas board, a nice stable hard flat surface, and generally, just as you can see here, some smeared scraped layers of paint, then some PVA solution down with some collage, which I then let dry, rip back, drip and splatter, and then I hand draw elements over, which then gets more paint smeared over, varnished. Then I get the sander out, sand through all of those layers, and just create a kind of fractured, very textured, layered surface that kind of works against the very hard-edged graphic quality of the stencils themselves. That's my preference. You know, half the fun is experimenting to see what you'll like. So here I am doing some more drawn elements that are going to work as kind of painted layers over the top of, you know, all of those base layers of collage, scraped paint, sanded surface, all the rest of it. So I'm just using acrylic and a brush there to paint in some sort of narrative details, if you like. And these are just like, oh, what even are they? They're like, I think it's like a Northern Soul dance step diagram, which is kind of a bit of a nod to a memory from my childhood, along with jackdaws. You see my dog make a bit of an appearance there. They don't really like the sound of the sander. Okay, I'm just going to go back up a step here, and this is because I forgot to cut my registration marks from my stencils before I started the cut. So I've printed off a couple of fresh ones here just to demonstrate and remind you this is far easier to do before you start cutting. I just got carried away. So grab yourself a hole punch, stack your stencils up completely in line, position them roughly where you want them on your base, and hole punch a couple of dots on two of the edges. Now this is fiddly, but hang in there with it. Hole punch a small dot of masking tape or a couple of dots of masking tape. Those little dots you then need to stick into those gaps or those holes you've punched, and you will then find you can always line up your holes with your little dots that are placed exactly where you need them on your base. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so for the next part we're just going to deal with the spraying. Now what I've done is skip past the prep of the silhouette because it's fairly straightforward and I don't want this to be too repetitive. So here I am just peeling up my silhouette, which is sprayed in black. You know, that will depend on your order of spraying, but for me black just happened to be the silhouette. So your next layers are going to be trickier, so I'm going to focus more about technique, preparing the stencils for these layers. Okay, a little spray mount on the back of your stencil. Okay, I'm hoping you can see my little registration dots. Maybe I'll zoom in. So I've got one there. I've got one there. And this one's lined up. So now I can just make sure those little bits have made good contact. Mask off these areas and good to go for second layer. Okay, so at this point I need to decide whether I take a bit of a risk. I'm wondering, I'm going to be sanding this a bit to try and soften it all, but do I drip before I do my last highlight layer a couple of spots running through? I'm just going to do it. What's life without a bit of risk? Okay, I've got some P150 sandpaper here, which is pretty well worn. So I'm going to sand these little splodges back now they're dry. Are they dry? Almost. And distress this, you know, the very graphic, harsh edges. So I'm just going to soften parts of it. And go really lightly. Okay, run a few marks through there, just softened everything. I don't know, do these things make a difference? I don't know, I'm just trying to sort of pull the whole thing together. I'm going to draw my pencil thing back in a bit as well. Okay, last layer. Again, find me a little dot. There's one. There's the other one. I've put a little spray mount on the back of that as well. Just make sure your little bits are down. I'll mask that off and spray them up. Okay, my next step after this layer, you'll see me peel it up now, starting to come together, was just to find that original stencil. I couldn't find the piece I cut out of the silhouette, so I just got a fresh copy, and masking everything off carefully just to spray that one little pupil detail back in. Now, I pulled this and I wasn't very happy with it, so I went back to my second layer. I was messing around with it, tried some other sort of grey speckles across the wings, didn't like it. I wanted, as a jackdaw has quite a light coloured head compared with the body, I thought, right, I'm going to spray the body tail back in grey and then see how that looks. So here's me setting up. I'm going to mask off the head. That's what you'll see me do next, and then spray this back in with my mid-tone, my grey, see how that looks. Maybe drop a couple of highlights in as well. So here I am masking off the head. Sprayed that mid-tone back in, peeling up nice and gently. Just be careful, you know, I didn't actually use any more spray mount on the back of this, even though kind of a day had elapsed between using them. There was still enough tack on the back of that to keep it in place. And yeah, just carefully peeling them off. As I said before, the beauty of these stencils, as painful as they are to cut, as long as you look after them, you can reuse them loads and, you know, do a little series and really explore it. So I'm happy with that. Couple of now little white, tiny little white highlights across the back, which is what you're going to see me masking off here. So these are just like the kind of last stage modifications, if you like. Not essential, but you know, I just couldn't leave it alone. I wasn't quite happy with it, and you know, it turns out I was glad with these modifications, you know, how they turned out. And peeling up the very last layer then ever so carefully. I just wanted these couple of white highlights to just kind of bridge between the two sections, the body and then this lovely, you know, why I went to this extra effort, the kind of fantastic sort of silvery white hood you get on a jackdaw, which I didn't feel was quite being communicated before this modification. Yeah, chuffed with that. Really enjoyable process too. Great to do some stenciling again and get out in the sun. Okay, there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video. Look out for installment 3, where I look at a different application of stencil style images using gel plate transfer, and there'll be another one as well on this kind of side project of a stencil I'm making of Brighton Pier. Okay, as ever, if you enjoyed the video, remember, support the channel by subscribing to get your notifications. I'll look forward to seeing you in a video soon. Ta-ta.